guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This is my guy, he's in his 40s, he is a military chaplain, and he shares his story about events that happened like 20 years ago, where he got to see firsthand exactly why you don't get married in the military, and how unfortunately there's so many gals out there from foreign countries where U.S. men are stationed that are out to use a guy for everything it's worth. This particular story is not about him, but a couple guys he served with and how they learned the hard way. And I thought it'd be a very good one to go over here, guys, as a refresher. As I've said countless times over the years, do not get married while you're in the military. If you're going to do it, fine, wait till you get out. Because so many guys get married in the military and they do it for various reasons, and it's a disaster. And they're used and go through an absolute nightmare. It's just not worth it. And of course, how in different countries where U.S. soldiers can be stationed, there are a lot of gals that live there that are poor, and they're looking for a sucker to marry and use for everything it's worth. Or in some cases, it's a whole scam operation to milk guys for what it's worth. Unsuspecting, naive guys. And last but not least, a reminder, listen to your bros. If your bros, all of them are telling you the same thing, that you're being an idiot, and you shouldn't do this, shouldn't date that girl, listen to them. And this you're going to see right here. So it starts off, says here, hello SSM. You can call me Kevin. I'm a military chaplain in my 40s, and I've ventured in and out of the military 3 separate times between 2 different branches since the early 2000s. As you can imagine, I've seen, heard, and experienced some wild things as far as relationships go. I've only been watching your channel about 2 months now, but I'm addicted to say the least. I'm a big believer in learning from others' mistakes rather than making them on your own. Amen, brother. I wish more people were like that, but unfortunately that's just not how it is. Although I'm new to your channel, I am not new to our pill. I, like many of your viewers, have many little aha moments after each crazy girl I dated in my teens and 20s, but really wasn't able to see the big picture and connect all the dots until about 2018 when RP content started to really become a thing on YouTube. Let me just start by saying that I was not always a chaplain. Actually, I was one of the last guys that anybody would expect to go the Jesus route, but it was the best decision I ever made. Isn't the Bible full of a lot of guys that definitely weren't going to go down a certain path, if you will, but then various events led them to that place? You never know. Hey, you never know about me, guys. I could become a man of God one day, for all you know. So some people are watching this and are like, oh, Lord. Never say never. Anyhow, I have more than one personal story of... Let me backtrack here. I have more than one personal story of God giving me plenty of warning signs about certain women I was interested in who are absolute landmines. Did I always listen to that small voice? No. I chose to ignore his voice on many occasions, only to touch that hot stove and learn the lessons the hard way. He says, thank God I've been a listener today. I've saved a few of my personal stories for a later time. I know everyone on your channel wants to hear the wildest stories, so here we go. Well, bro, yes, definitely send your stories down the road. And yeah, you were listening to a voice all right. You were listening to not the voice from up there. You're listening to the voice down there that got you in trouble. I'm going to be a bit vague on the specifics for anonymity. The story I have for you today did not happen to me, but I had a front row seat to it during my first enlistment. When I was 18 years old, I joined the Air Force. After basic training and tech school, I was immediately stationed at the biggest party base in Europe, 1 month before the war in Iraq officially kicked in 2003. The build-up forced everyone to work long hours, and we were the direct support base in the Middle East, to the Middle East. As a result of the long hours, we also partied very hard. Bar none, those were the wildest 2 years of my life. During that time, I also learned a lot about the pitfalls of not choosing wisely in marriage. Here we go. I was the youngest in my group of friends. There was an inner circle of about 7 to 10 of us that were constantly fluctuating with a wilder group of about 30 friends that would tear up any town wherever we went. My closest friends were all 5 to 10 years older than me, and we were all involved working in aircraft maintenance in one way or another. All of these guys were wild. Some were married, most were single, some were cheaters, some were swingers, some liked prostitutes, and some fit more than one of those categories. About a year after I'd been stationed here, a new guy came into our group. We will call him Mick. Okay, my brother-in-law was an officer in the Navy, still is, and definitely the officers are supposed to behave quite well, and I'm going to believe my brother-in-law behaved during the years, but he certainly made a point that the other enlisted guys, when they were, we get some leave time where, yeah, there's a certain stereotype about the sailors and the soldiers when they're on leave and living it up. Two of my best friends, Steve and Tim, not their real names of course, have been previously stationed with Mick in South Korea. Mick was a dude that was a great guy and a very fun to drink with, but was not blessed with any physical attributes that women would find appealing. He was dumb, ugly, and fat. Mick was so fat that he even had to buy women's maternity pants for his dress uniform. And how the hell was he in the military? I mean, obviously in the last number of years, they're allowing anybody in there because to fill some numbers, things have changed in terms of making sure there's some standards now, but my God. We really had a great time making fun of him for that. The Air Force back then did not have as strict standards as they do today. You could be fat, fail your PT test, and have a DUI or two under your belt. It didn't matter. At the time, the Air Force needed bodies for the buildup in Iraq, and our base directly supported the war efforts. On top of that, where we were stationed also had a reputation as one of the wildest bases on the planet at the time. Simply put, unless you off someone, the higher-ups did not bat an eye. Okay, well, as he said, they needed bodies. I'm not going to get into that. Well, the word on the street was that Mick had legally married a Russian prostitute while he was stationed in Korea. Smack the Mick. Is he out of his mind? Well, let's see. Dumb, fat, out of shape, all that. He's going to take anybody that pays attention to him. And these girls knew it. He says, sorry, technically she wasn't a prostitute. She was a juicy girl. Basically a girl who works at a strip club. Apparently when you go to certain clubs outside of bases in South Korea, you are swarmed by strippers who want you to buy them a juice from the bar. Usually an extremely overpriced $20 Coca-Cola, which in turn qualifies you to be led back to the back room and given a lap dance or who else knows what. I guess the buying a stripper juice angle was a way to legally smokescreen the prostitution aspect from the authorities. Well, yeah, exactly. It's like going into a club and buying a $1,000 bottle of champagne and, also Jessica and her friends are going to give you some special loving in the back. No different. Because, hey, you just bought an overpriced bottle of champagne and these girls just happen to hook up with you. Whatever technically I may be missing about her profession isn't really important. Let's just say she's not the type of girl you marry. Absolutely not. So here we go. He's stationed in South Korea. These Russian gals are coming up on these guys, military guys. I know it's a guarantee. There you go. Anyway, Mick was a good guy and we liked him. Mick was also very naive. From what I gather, a lot of people warned about not marrying her when they were stationed in Korea together. Obviously, he didn't listen, but what can you do? She's now his wife, and he was happy as a clam. He was happy as a clam because Mick was like a 3 in the looks department, and she was like this cute little 7. Mick also liked to throw his money around with her. Keep in mind, we were all enlisted and didn't make much money. Typical guy who's clueless. In his mind, the only way I'm going to get a girl like me is throw money at her. Gee, maybe he could have made some effort to lose a lot of the fucking weight and take care of himself physically. That could have helped him out a little bit. No, it's easier just to look like a slob and throw money at girls that pay attention to you. Well, it's going to bite him in the ass. Now his wife, Sonia, I think was her name, had come over to Europe with one of her Russian stripper friends who married another airman who was also way below his wife in the looks department. It was obvious to everyone else what was going on. For those of you outsiders, let me explain what happens in the military. Women from poor countries latch on to gullible, dorky, not very good-looking servicemen and get them to marry them. It's been happening pretty consistently for decades. Things go great for a few months, sometimes even years, but eventually they either bleed them dry financially, get worker status in the U.S., find somebody else, or a combination of all three, and in the end, these poor saps are always shocked. Sounds about right. But let me remind you, that isn't just limited to the military and these scams that go on. This happens everywhere. Think about it. I'm going to read this again. I want you guys to apply this to just your average Joe who... You have a pretty girl in her prime, in her late teens and 20s, and when she realizes, okay, I'm ready to settle down now, the following's going to happen. I'll read this again. Latch on to the gullible, dorky, not very good-looking servicemen and get them to marry them. Well, that can happen to your average nice guy who doesn't know any better. Things go great for the first few months or years, but eventually they either bleed them dry financially and find somebody else, monkey branch, or a combination of all three, and in the end, these poor saps are always shocked. It's the same thing anywhere else. This is why this material is important. This is why guys need to pull their heads out of their asses and stop buying into the crap they're fed through the entertainment industry. Seriously. Anyway, Mick's case was no different. In his case, however, I had a front row seat to see how it worked out in small increments that at first glance seemed innocent enough. First, she missed her family, so she wanted to return to Russia for a visit. Mick probably thought, okay, no problem, so he paid for her ticket and also gave her $500 in cash for her trip. I'm guessing now they're now living on the base wherever you're stationed. I guess. Well, no. Maybe in Europe. She's not in Iraq. Okay, so let's just say they're married, so they're living on base in the base housing in Europe. So she's not dancing anymore. So she relies on him for money. Okay. What a good deal for her. Well, he paid for her ticket and $500 cash. Nothing wrong with that. But then after she'd been home for a few weeks, she calls asking for more money to help her family. How do you know she has a family? How do you know this isn't obviously a big scam to get more and more money out of these guys, and that money's going to probably her pimp or something like that? Her pimp Ivan, or whatever his name is, or Sergey. Ivan and Sergey, the Russian Chad and Tyrones. Mick forks out another $2,000 to $3,000, which goes really far in the backwoods Russia where she's from. And while she eventually comes back and things are great. Might I add that Mick has already spent $10,000 flying her and some of her family back to the States for their marriage ceremony. Smack! What a bonehead. This is what happens, guys, when you don't take care of yourselves and you'll take any girl you can get, but a guy that works on himself, improves himself in all aspects of his life, he's not going to have to be so desperate and do desperate things to get a girl to like him. This guy's just setting himself up to be, Well, it wasn't too long after she returned that Sonia and her other juicy girl stripper friends started going out to clubs without their husbands. Shocker. Mick was naive, but not that naive, and at least he wasn't a total pushover. He got pretty angry about that, as any service member, even the stupidest, knows what happens when someone's wife goes to the club with her friends. So it caused a huge fight. So what does Sonia do? She gets pregnant. Oh, God. Yeah, and I'm sure it's with Mick's baby. Well, now Mick is ecstatic. He's going to be a dad and whatnot. Sonia, other friend from Russia, who's married to the other airman, also gets pregnant at the same time. What an amazing coincidence. Now they get more money. Mick and this other guy, who are now friends by default because of their Russian wives, are now both overjoyed. Life couldn't be better for them. Well, Sonia then wants to go back to Russia once again. Mick is thinking, sure, no problem. Obviously, she wants to share the great news with her family and spend some time with them. So he buys her another ticket. Only this time she wants to go for 2 months and come back just before the baby's born. So, because she's going to be gone for so long, she wants to take all her clothes that he bought for her, and she also wants to take the little expensive purse dog that Mick bought for her as well. That's right, she took the dog. Also noteworthy is the fact that Sonia's friend, the other Russian girl, flies back to Russia at the exact same time. Both pregnant Russian juicy girls leave at the same time with cash and all their belongings. So anybody that has a shred of intelligence here can see the writing on the wall. They're bailing. But we're not done yet. Mick then casually tells our friend Steve this news. Now, if SSM is blunt and abrasive with his smacks when we are dumb, well, Sean is about 10 times more abrasive and confrontational. Really? Steve or Sean? Which one is it? I think you mixed it up. Steve has repeatedly said things to Mick, even publicly in front of all the guys, like, I can't believe your retarded ass married that whore from the strip club. She's going to take your money one day and never come back. Well, you know what? Steve or Sean, whichever one that is doing that guy a favor. Personally, he should say that one-on-one to Mick so it doesn't publicly make him feel stupid, because then Mick's going to have a problem with him. But the point is, Mick needs a dose of reality. Now, before Mick would just awkwardly laugh it off, being publicly humiliated like that in front of his bros. Honestly, I felt very bad for Mick when Steve would say things like that in public. I thought Steve was just a mean SOB. But what I didn't realize at the time was how street smart and honest Steve was. He was actually the best friend that Mick had because he had the balls to tell him like it was. Yes, that's good he was telling him that. I would have handled it a little differently. Because when you say something to somebody that is perceived as insulting, but you're trying to help them, if you do it privately, they may not like it, but they can appreciate it. But if you do it publicly, and it's like a humiliation thing, it's going to backfire. So what happens to Mick next? Well, his wife Sonia calls him every day from Russia, and things are going great, but wouldn't you know it, she needs more money. Gee, who could have seen that coming? And it's every week she needs more money. And sure enough, Mick keeps forking it out. This trip to Russia has cost Mick about $10,000 to $15,000, and now he's out of money. Smack! God sakes, he needs more. Steve yelling at him. Guys, $10,000 to $15,000. We could all use an extra $10,000 to $15,000 today. But $10,000 to $15,000 in 2003, 4, or 5 had a hell of a lot more purchasing power than it does today. And this guy is shelling it all out to her. And also then, wouldn't you know it, all of a sudden, as soon as he's bled dry, she stops answering her phone. No email either. Now, what went through Mick's mind of what happened, I couldn't tell you exactly. Mick has no contact info for any of her family either, and the Russian police don't know anything. Mick is probably not even sure exactly where she lives. Well, you're right about Mick being dumb. You think if you're going to marry someone, you're going to find out exactly who their family is, where they live, all these details. I mean, maybe she told him, but it was obviously a bunch of crap. But about the same time, Sonia's other Russian friend who married the other airman, stopped contact with her husband as well. She also took everything with her and got as much money as she could before she cut off contact. Can you imagine? But wait, it gets worse. Yeah, guys, it's about to get worse. So if you're eating something right now, I encourage you to finish eating. Maybe go to the bathroom. Wait a few minutes and you can hear the rest of the story here. Now, I should also throw in at this point that my other close friend Tom, who I mentioned earlier, was also dating a Russian girl, not a stripper, just a regular Russian girl living in Western Europe. She'd become acquainted with these other two Russian girls through default by being at the same parties. She told my friend Tom what was about to happen in Mick's relationship. Did Tom say anything to Mick? I'm not really sure, and I'm not sure if it would have helped. Everyone had warned Mick, but Mick didn't want to know the truth. Mick was the 3 who was married to Sonia, the 7, and she was pregnant with his child. Life was going to be perfect for him. Well, somehow word eventually got around through the close network of Russian girlfriends that many of us had that those two girls just a few months later were back to the go-go bars outside the airbase in Korea, again working as juicy girls. Number 1, no surprise there. They milked these guys for everything it's worth, and then moved on to the next suckers. But wait a second, they were pregnant. What happened there? Again, I hope you guys aren't eating. Through the Russian girlfriend grapevine, we eventually learned what happened. Sonia and her friend had, wait for it, gotten procedures, and they returned to Russia, and they went right back to Korea trying to land another couple of suckers. That is fucking despicable. They are evil. They belong behind bars, clearly visibly pregnant. Don't know whose kids they were actually, but regardless. And those poor babies, for their scam. But you know what? There would always be somebody out there There'll be somebody that watches this video that's going to say, they were poor. They were from poor parts of the world. They had no other options. Fuck them. And fuck you if you're saying that too. These assholes knew what they were doing. Maybe they were working for the mob. I don't know. This is just part, but I don't care. They're fucking pieces of shit. And Mick and the other dude, I forget his name, were completely suckered. They should have listened to all the guys, but they didn't. But still, nobody deserves this to happen to them, and especially those babies. Who knows how many times they've done this before? The girls informed us that this is a common practice among many of the girls in poorer parts of Russia. They do this as their routine for 10 to 15 years before their looks run out, and then retire very well for themselves back in rural Russia. I don't care. They're pieces of shit. I wish I could tell you more of what happened to Mick, but his situation was coinciding with the end of my tour in Europe, and I lost contact with Mick and Steve. I ran into Tom briefly about 15 years later, but Mick's case did not come up. Well, SSM, there are many lessons you could take away from a story like this. Here are a few of my observations. Number 1, marrying way outside of your looks range is dangerous. Yes, it is, brother. Number 2, marrying girls from poor countries and economic regions is dangerous. Yeah, because they're out to use a guy. 3, marrying any form of stripper or prostitute is always extremely dangerous. And 4, listen to your friends. Sir, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you say. It says, SSM, I do a lot of counseling with young men who don't know any better, and I did not have their father figure in their lives to teach them. I do my best to share these types of stories and situations regarding similar relationship issues that they are going through. I'll continue to share this story and those like that from your channel. They do help. Keep being that internet father that many of us never had, giving us words of wisdom, all while being entertained. Blessings, Chaplain Kevin. Well, sir, I really appreciate you writing in, sharing that. It's not the most upbeat story. It certainly didn't end on a high note like a lot of stories I like to end on a high note, but that's life. It's not always going to end on a high note. It can be pretty freaking ugly. So, we've learned a lot here today, and I know a lot of you probably were barfing and disgusted with those two assholes that were doing that. So, for you young guys out there that are in the military, thinking about going to the military, don't get married. Be careful where you're stationed in different parts of the world, and these young, beautiful women who you may feel bad for are trying to rope you in. Does this mean they're all like this in this story? Of course not, but plenty are, and have no problem using a guy. And for God's sakes, guys, again, this is why I just hammer it into you. Self-improvement. Take care of yourself on multiple fronts. Physically, your income, all these things in your life, so you don't become that desperate sucker like Mick, who will take anything they can get and will be used for everything they're worth. I mean, really. When the better you are, the better you've built yourself up in so many ways, the more choice you're going to have, if indeed you're a relationship type of guy. That's what we're focusing on here. But then again, also, if you have a lot of good things going for you, you're not going to settle for crappy friends because you just want some human contact. People that are desperate for any human contact will settle for anybody and they get taken advantage of. So hopefully Mick and the other dude learned their lesson, but the odds are they probably didn't. So guys, lots of scams out there. Be careful. All right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.